Good afternoon, everybody. We have a little bit different time today. Instead of the usual 7 o'clock, I decided I would go on this afternoon, maybe reach some new people. I wanted to give thanks to the people that helped get me to where I am in my career. I think gratitude is a virtue that is not expressed enough. And no man is an island. I've had a wonderful career. And I continue to do so. It's what I've wanted to do from the time I was 12 years old, and a lot of people helped me get there. And I think it's a good thing to name names, if you will. Originally, I was planning on doing this outside. It's a nice day. It's like 90 degrees out there here in Western New York. It's hot, yeah, but I like it hot. Growing up in Florida. But anyway, I had planned on sitting out there, maybe having a bourbon, a cigar, and relaxing and having this nice little conversation. But the wind was blowing up pretty good, and the trees were making so much noise. It was screwing up the audio. So I had to come back down into the cave here to broadcast. But maybe I'll grab that cigar uh, uh, on the porch afterwards. So let's say hello to who's here. I know it's a little bit different time, but we got some of our regulars have showed up. Past Master Dan is here. Citizen Ronan. Uh, James Enstall says hello from St. Louis. Hello, James. James Murphy. Hail Compass Comics and hail the chat. You adorable. You're you adorable bunch. David Ferguson says hello from East Aurora. Hey, that's my town. That's where I live. Jason Silvestri, hello from Florida, my other home state where I grew up. Edgardo de la Peñas, hi there, Graham. Hello, Edgardo. Opinionated person, is doing a little wave. Very nice. Good to see a good crowd here, considering it's in the middle of the day and we're all hard workers. Right? We're all working, unless some of you folks are out over the pond there. It's evening time, past dinner, so you guys can check in. So, I got to start at the beginning. I got to start with my mom. My mom was a teacher, and she was very artistic herself, and she really supported my decision when I decided, like I said, when I was 12 years old, I wanted to draw comics. I felt that was my calling. I love storytelling, and that's what I wanted to do. And I told my parents that, and my mom was very supportive. My dad, not so much. And I understand. I mean, both my parents were college educated. My mom was a teacher, as I said, and my dad was a homicide detective. He was a little bit more street, and he didn't quite understand somebody wanted to be an artist as a career, because I had two cousins that had graduated with master's degrees from Pratt Institute, a very prestigious art school in New York. And they weren't working in the field. They were, one was laying brick and the other one was delivering pizzas. So he had a hard time wrapping his head around it. But mom, she was always very supportive of her kids. And she helped guide me, on my career. The next one up that I have to give a shout out to is my sixth grade teacher, Mr. Schneider. This was in the year 1973-74 in Long Beach, New York. He was my sixth grade teacher, and it was his first year as a teacher. I was in his first class, and he was young. I think he was probably 22 years old. He was hip to what was happening, musically. He had us do like a school presentation, of rock and roll music, the kind of stuff that he grew up with. And but he also liked comics, and so he brought in a stack of comics for the kids to read at recess. And that was really, I mean, I had seen comics had come and gone through my house and stuff, But it wasn't until then that it really clicked with me. There was a Justice League comic that had all the characters that I knew, like from television shows and stuff. Um, and I fell in love with comics right then and there. So if it wasn't for Mr. Schneider, bringing those in, and also he was such a very supportive teacher, because I was always drawing in class, and he helped uh, that desire take root. That the ember that was burning there, helped me decide to explore it further. By the time I got to high school, um, I was a little bit embarrassed. Comics today and the pop culture has become um, the in thing. It's been very cool. But back when I was a kid, after a certain age, if you read comics, you were looked down upon. You were, a geek or a goofball, and the cool kids didn't want to have anything to do with you. So when I got to high school, I played sports and stuff, and I had friends in that realm, the jock realm too. Um, but in the art classes, I wanted to draw comics, and I was drawing comics, and I was a little bit embarrassed about it because some of the other artists in there, were doing paintings and the artsy fartsy shit, and I was doing Conan. I was drawing Conan comics, but Mrs. Fields, my teacher, was very supportive of that. She felt, in fact, she even had a guest speaker, and I don't know who it was. He worked for Marvel Comics. Uh, I don't think he was an editor. He might have been an executive, and he spoke to our classroom. And I'll never forget one of the times he asked, is any, he's talking about comics, and he says, "Does anybody read comics here?" And like nobody's hands went up, but they all looked at me. And I'm like, I didn't want to put my hand up because I was still feeling a little bit embarrassed about it. But Mrs. Fields encouraged me to build my portfolio because eventually I wanted to end up and go to the Joe Kubert School, which brings up my next inspiration and person I have to give thanks to, and that was Joe. It's funny because when I went to the school, I wasn't a Joe Kubert fan. I didn't read the Army comics. Uh, I only had one Tarzan comic. I'd never read the Burroughs books at that point, so I didn't quite understand why Tarzan was talking, very, intelligently, and not, me Tarzan, you Jane stuff. Yeah. So I would look at his work, and I remember just being knocked out by his covers and the design and the power of them. But I always felt like the drawing was really loose, and that's just stupidity. The uneducated mind, looking for something they can relate to, which is slick and you know uh, once I got to the school, I realized what a genius Joe is, and his storytelling, and the organic nature of his drawings. Um, but anyway, when I got to the school, Joe was a huge influence. He taught sequential storytelling. I believe all 3 years. It was a 3 year school. I went 2 years with a year in between. So I went 1 year, ran out of money, went back to community college in Florida. Saved up money, went back for a second year, ran out of money again, and never went back. But back then, Joe was teaching the classes, even first year sequential storytelling, and I learned so much from him. Uh, some of the things uh, that he would do, he would put like a piece of tracing paper over your drawing, and just in 2 seconds, show you what you did wrong. And it was just amazing. It's like, oh my God, look at this. Am I ever going to be able to do this kind of stuff? And now I do that on students' boards as well. But Joe was a huge influence, not only just because of his school, but because of studying his work, studying his storytelling. Um, and the motivation that he would give you, to for this career, because he wanted everybody, he wanted obviously successful students to come out of the school. It was better for the school too. Um, but he was, the consummate teacher and a real presence, and a guy you didn't want to let down. You'll have bosses like that sometimes in your life. There's not many of them, but there's those people you want to work hard for because you're looking for their blessing. And Joe was one of those guys. I would skip other assignments to put extra time into his assignments, and so did everybody else, to be honest. But Joe was amazing. Also at the Cubert School was a man by the name of John Belfi, and John took me under his wing. Uh, he taught the business end. He taught paste up and mechanicals, which was the way that you would prepare stuff for print back in the day before Photoshop. You had to hand do it. You had to print out text and paste it down, and screen photographs into dot patterns so that they were, printable. And so that was the course that he taught. John was a very well-respected cartoonist. He used to do a strip called Straight Arrow back in the 50s. But he got out of comics, I think, in the 50s, probably when Straight Arrow ended for him, and got into advertising. And so he also taught the business end of comics. And because in our most artists and writers are terrible businessmen. They're off in their la la land thinking about the next fun thing that they want to do or idea that they want to work on. But you have to be a good businessman, and Joe was one too. Joe, which is probably why he put this as a curriculum in his course or in his in his school, because you really have to be a good businessman to know finances, know what you're worth, to stand up for uh, your rights, knowing how to deal with contracts, all that kind of stuff. And some of the things that John Belfi taught were that I'll never forget. He said, because you're freelancers, you don't get taxes taken out, and taxes are going to come due. And he said, you need to pay them quarterly, and you need to take 30% out of every single check you receive and put it in a savings account, and that you'll label as your tax account, so that when your quarterly payments come up or your your final payment at the end, you have that money set aside. And that was a game changer, because my first year of marriage, uh, we were using every penny we had just to set up our apartment, and taxes came due and I didn't have it. We blew through that tax money. But thankfully, I had a royalty check come in that ended up paying for it, and that's a story I will get to when I thank somebody else down the road here. The next person that was, and I think it's almost immeasurable how much this guy helped me, because he really took me under his wing, and that was Sal and Mandela. Sal was an artist. He worked under Dick Giordano. He taught at the School of Visual Arts, and he also taught at the Cubert School. Sal was also an editor at DC Comics at the time I was going to school there. And Sal taught, what did he teach? I guess he taught my second year. I think he taught, I thought it was sequential storytelling, but I thought that was Joe. But I can't remember. It's irrelevant. But I had a couple school assignments that I had done that Sal really liked, and he would bring me in every Thursday. He had me come into the city and come up to DC Comics, and so he would introduce me to editors, because back then you could come up, have an appointment with an editor, and they would show you around a little bit, make some introductions, and then you could wander the hallways and uh, and meet people. It was a great way to because back then, you just never knew. An assignment could come in on an editor's desk that was running late or something like that, and you're standing there and you peek your head in and you say, "Oh, hi, Denny O'Neill. My name's Graham Nolan. I'm an artist. Can I show you my portfolio?" And they'd say, "Yeah, come on in." If he had nothing to do, and he'd look at it, and you could walk out of there with an assignment that day. It was pretty amazing. Pretty amazing business back then. Now it's so corporate and homogenized and locked up. Uh, those kind of things just don't happen anymore. But I'm happy that they existed back when I was breaking in. So Sal would bring me in as I was a poor student. He would take me out to eat on the DC credit card because it was business. I was a young guy showing his portfolio and all that. But the really fun stuff was when on Thursday nights a bunch of editors would all go out to like an Irish pub for drinks and bite to eat, mostly drinks. And I used to go out with them, so I got to hang out with Dick Giordano, Ernie Colon, Gray Morrow. Um, oh, jeez, I can't remember who else. There was a whole bunch of guys that would come in and out. But that was like the core that was always there. And I always used to have to catch the bus back to New Jersey, so I tried to get that last midnight bus that was leaving Port Authority. We were way up in Midtown, Port Authority's on like 8th Avenue and 42nd Street, and we were up at 52nd, 56th Street, somewhere around there. And, I lose track of time, be drinking and talking, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden I look at my clock. I'm like, oh, crap. I have to go. I grab my shit and I take off running, all those city blocks, to make it to the bus station to get out of there, get back to Jersey in time. One time I didn't make it and I had to sleep on the bus station floor at Port Authority. Yeah, I couldn't shower enough when I got home. You haven't lived till you slept on the Port Authority floor. And this is back in the 80s. This is back before Giuliani had cleaned up the city and brought tourism in and all that kind of stuff. When 42nd Street was peep shows, hookers, drug addicts, and shell games. So that was kind of interesting. But I'm digressing a little bit. The point was Sal, who kind of set me on my career. I made my first sale to Sal for New Talent Showcase, and so he really got my foot in the door there. So he was great. Next guy up was a former QB by the name of Tim Truman. Of course, Tim went on to great success with Scout and a bunch of creator-owned projects. But Tim had recommended me to some people at TSR, which is the Dungeons and Dragons people, because he had done illustrations for their modules back in the day. And so he recommended them to me, and I ended up picking up a bunch of work from TSR, which is like really. I wasn't a Dungeons and Dragons fan. I didn't know anything about the game, and I still don't. But they have these things called modules, and the modules are sort of like, I guess, how to. It's like lists of the characters and their powers and all that stuff, and what they are and what they can do, their power levels or whatever. So I got to draw some really funky, weird crap for that, and it paid really well. Probably paid better than comics, to be honest. But that was a great opening. And then Tim also recommended me to Eclipse because he had a publishing, I should say, a packaging company called Four Winds, and he was packaging a bunch of books for Eclipse Comics. And some of the guys that were working in Four Winds at the time were Chuck Dixon, Bo Smith, Tim Harkins, Gary Quapitz, and then me. I got to work on The Prowler, which was written by Tim, and the main story drawn by John K. Snyder III. Um, and then there was a second story about the Prowler when he was a young man in the 1940s, and that was written by Michael Price and illustrated by me. And that was a great time. It was a great learning experience. I was getting to work on characters that hadn't been created before. Had a lot of freedom at Eclipse Comics to do what we wanted. I could explore different styles. I was going through my Kirby phase at the time, and not the way Kirby draws. I didn't have that, that type of look, but I was just fascinated by how he spotted blacks with no cross hatching and stuff, just bam, flat black. So that's what I was doing because it took place in the 1940s. So I figured I'd try that. Uh, and it was really fun. I was working twice up. So, nowadays, since 1968, I believe, when they cut down the size of the paper to 10 by 15 as your image area. Before that, I think that's 65%. Before then, they were working twice up, so it was twice the size of the printed page. Really big. You couldn't even Xerox the things. But because I was doing something that took place in the 40s, I did it that style, and it was a lot of fun. It's a lot of work. I can't believe how much detail some of those guys used to get in working that big, but that was really cool. But yeah, Tim Truman helped get my foot in the door at Eclipse Comics and introduced me to two lifelong friends, Chuck Dixon and Bo Smith. So I'm eternally grateful to him for that. So next up was, or is, Mike Carlin. Mike hired me. He was, at the time, he was an assistant editor for Mark Gruenwald over at Marvel Comics. And I think Mike might have been handling, some of the, what's the word I'm looking for? Licensed books, because he had a script, which was an inventory story for a Transformers comic to give me a shot at. So I took that script home and I worked on it, and then I got paid and it went in the drawer. And like a few months later, they needed it, so it actually got printed. And this takes us back to what I was saying about taking your tax money out. Because I first got married, I didn't do that, and a big tax bill came in for like $4,000, which again, this is 1985 money. It was a lot of money for somebody who didn't have it. It's a lot of money now, but back then it was even more. And here we are, these newlyweds starting off, and we're already in the hole. It's like, oh shit, how are we gonna pay this back? I'm making like $65 a page or something when I can get the work. The rest of the time I'm working at just a little advertising agency in New Jersey, which wasn't paying jack. And the mailman comes and there's a royalty check in there for that Transformer story for over $5,000. So I was able to pay off that, take some tax money out for the next payment, and we were flush just like that. Because evidently that Transformer comic was selling like crazy. And I can only imagine, like here I am doing a fill-in. Herb Trimpe, who was the regular artist on it, was getting those kind of royalties every single month. So that was an eye-opener for me. That, wow, royalties, this is a lot better than what I got paid to do the darn thing. So Mike gave me a shot at that, and then later on, Mike left shortly thereafter to go to DC, and he eventually hired me again. What was the first thing I did for him? I think it was Power of the Atom. He gave me a shot at Power of the Atom, so that was like my first monthly book outside of the stuff I did for Eclipse. So I'm grateful to Mike for trusting me and giving me a shot. Uh, the next guy is Mike Gold, also an editor at DC Comics, and Mike and I couldn't be more different people. Mike rolls politically very hard left, and I roll to the right. Um, but Mike and I got along. This is back in the day when people of with different politics could get along. Because we both had the same goal, and that is to create great comics. The stuff didn't, it didn't come up very often, but if it did, I take my shot, he'd take his shot. We walk away agreeing to disagree. But what I really liked about Mike as an editor was he was very hands off. Um, he was of the mind that you hire the people you want to hire and let them do their job because that's what you're hiring to do. He wasn't a micromanager. So when uh, Tim Truman had suggested me again, uh, Tim coming in again because he had suggested me for Hawk World. Tim had just written and illustrated the Prestige series, and it did very, very well. And they decided they're going to spin it off into a monthly book. And I don't know if Tim couldn't do a monthly or he just didn't have the interest in drawing it. So he recommended me, and then he and John Ostrander handled the script duties on it. And so Mike Gold was the editor, and it was at that time on my period on Hawk World that I feel that my style really came forward. That was a lot of times when I look back on other mainstream stuff that I did. I was trying to make it mainstream instead of just trying to do it the way I wanted to do it. When I worked for Eclipse, I did it my way, and that work was so much better than anything that I did for Marvel and DC. But then when I got to do Hawk World, Mike wasn't pushing anything. So because I was illustrating the whole thing, drawing it and inking it, I got to experiment with different textures and different line weights, and by I think issue 7, uh, it was a story with the Shadow Thief, and I really feel when I look at that issue, it's like, bam, it all came together. Um, so that was really cool, and I really enjoyed working with Mike. And like I said, we very different people, but a ton of respect for him and how he handled talent. The next guy up is my old friend Chuck Dixon. Chuck and I have been friends since those days at Eclipse. As I said, lifelong friends since 1985, 86, something like that. That's a lot of years. And Chuck has always had my back, and I've always had his back. But he recommended me for Bane. He was already in the Batman offices working on Robin, and he was there for the initial conferences where they were discussing um, what would become Nightfall and the necessary needs to get that story into play. And one was the development of a brand new villain, and 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 Chuck was the guy who threw my name out. Now I had been you know in and out of the Bat offices around that time of showing my portfolio to Denny O'Neil and to Archie Goodwin, so they had seen some of my work. And I'm not sure about the timeline. I always get this confused because it was so long ago. Because I had done I had done 3 issues, fill-in issues on Detective. It was supposed to be one. It was a Detective 650. It was a fill-in issue, and then they added 2 more to it. Because they liked what I did. And I think I was working on that first. So Scott Peterson and Denny and Archie had seen my work on the Batman projects. At least that's the way I remember it. And it was Chuck who recommended me. So when I got to design Bane, I have all four of those guys to thank for that, but primarily Chuck for throwing my name out. So thanks, pal. Much appreciated. Scott Peterson was the editor, and Scott was a young guy, younger than me at the time. And so but he was studying under Denny O'Neil. He was one of those guys, probably last. He was of that era that was the last of the guys that actually worked under the great editors, where they were passing down the various skill sets and necessary things that you had to know about the comic book business and how to edit it. It started with Stan Lee to Roy Thomas and Jerry Conway, Len Wein, Denny O'Neil, Archie Goodwin. All of those guys, came down through through that school, if you will. And then right around that time, Scott was probably the last guy. So I had a lot of respect for Scott, even though he was a young guy, younger than me. But he had a good sense of story. He had a good sense of art. He knew what he liked. He was very supportive of me, and even though I was doing a monthly book, he was the guy that allowed me to ink one of my childhood idols, Dick Sprang. And when that assignment came in, I think he called me and said, "Hey, I got an assignment for you. I don't know if you want to do it." And I was like, "What is that?" He goes, "How'd you like to ink Dick Sprang?" I'm like, "What? Dick Sprang? Are you kidding me?" I couldn't believe it. And Dick, this is like 1995, I think. Dick was in his 80s. And I didn't know what to expect when this page came up. It was going to be a Batman Bane. It was for a pinup book or something. And so Scott was going to have me do the layout. Dick would do the pencils, and then I would ink Dick's pencils. And so I did this layout, thinking like German expressionism, which was huge in the Dick Sprang era, with the giant figures and stuff like that. So I had Bane as this giant figure, and little Batman and Robin as Bane is towering over them, and bones and skulls and stuff all over the floor. And of course, I drew it the way I would draw it, and then I got the pencils. The pencils arrived. I hadn't seen any of the work yet, and I opened up the FedEx box, and I almost crapped my pants. These pencils looked like they were penciled by a man of 30 years old in 1940. They were so tight. They looked. He hadn't missed a step. Everything was amazing looking on these pages, and I was just completely choked. I'm like, oh my God, this is Dick Sprang. Look at these original pencils are sitting on my board here. What am I going to do with this? And I just stared at it. And I finally took out a pen, and I decided I was going to start on these little skulls in the background, because if I screwed them up, nobody would notice, because I was so nervous. And then eventually I started, getting my confidence. And so the next thing I did, of course, was Bane, because how am I going to mess that up? Even though it was a Dick Sprang Bane, I felt very confident in doing it. And then the last thing I did was Batman. I did Robin, but I saved Batman for last. And it was an amazing experience. And I have Scott to thank for that. I have the original in my studio, because I bought it. I talked to Dick, and he referred me to his agent, and he sold it to me. So I have that original, and the pencils, or Xerox of the pencils, and the letter Dick wrote me, telling me how much he enjoyed the collaboration, and how much he enjoyed what I did in the inks on it. So that's a real treasure for me, and it wouldn't have happened without Scott. So thank you, Scott Peterson, for that. Next guy up is a man by the name of Jay Kennedy, and he was the editor at King Feature Syndicate. Around 2000, 1999, somewhere around there, I was getting fed up with comics. That was the first time I was getting fed up with comics. It came back. But I was getting fed up with the direction of comics. As you've heard me say before, I couldn't give those classic comics to my young girls at the time without having to read through them and make sure that they were actually appropriate. Whereas my mom could go to a spinner rack and pick up, Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, whatever, without having to look Fantastic Four, without having to look through it. The only thing that would give her pause was Conan. But by that time, that was tame compared to the stuff that was showing up. Anyway, I had self-published Monster Island, and I was trying to get it syndicated, and none of the all the syndicates loved it, but all the syndicates also said they cannot sell a continuity strip to the papers. So it was DOA when it came through. But Jay Kennedy saw what I was doing and my style and stuff, and wanted to get me on board something. And he had an opening coming up on Rex Morgan, MD, a medical strip, which had been running for many, many years and popular. And even at that time, they're still in close to 400 papers. It was 300 and something papers, which is that's a really good list. So I had to do a whole bunch of samples and stuff, and eventually I got that job. So if it wasn't for Jay Kennedy, I wouldn't have gone into comic strips, and I wouldn't have found out how soul-sucking they are. I spent 13 years doing newspaper strips, and it sounded so exciting, because I used to read about the newspaper strip guys and living out in Connecticut, and the golf tournaments and the drinking and the shenanigans that would go on. I was like, oh man, that's the life of a cartoonist. This is what I want to do. But it wasn't like that. By that time, papers were closing, strips were being dropped, numbers were going down. And a strip like Rex Morgan was just a cash cow. They didn't have to sell it. They were busy selling the latest, talking head strip or talking head humor strip, which is usually a derivative of The Far Side or Calvin and Hobbes. So they didn't put any effort into any of those continuity strips. So there was no gratitude. There was no thank you for, because I went into it whole hog. I wanted to elevate that strip back to its heyday, and make it something to look at in a newspaper again. And little did I know that newspapers would change the aspect ratio to fit more strips in. So, they would stretch it out or stretch it up, and, just screw up the designs, or worse, they'd cut it up and put it stacked, so you lose the whole sense of horizontal flow. But, the comic business wasn't doing so great. It was a steady paycheck, and I had mouths to feed. So I stuck with it up until the final straw, where I just I couldn't do it anymore. I just, I had to take a risk and get out and try something else. So I ended up doing, after I got out, again, my friend Chuck called me and said he was working with your boy Zach and Sylvester Stallone on a project called The Expendables Go to Hell, that Zach was going to handle the crowdfunding part of it and some scripting, and then Chuck was going to write the main storyline. So he asked me if I wanted to do it, and I'm like, yeah, sure, that sounds great. So that was like my first introduction to crowdfunding. Well, not my first introduction, my first successful introduction to crowdfunding, because I could see how well Zach did generating money for it. Um, and it got me thinking about doing it myself when I finished it. I had a few properties that I had proposed to uh, other publishers, and they all turned them down. The first one was a horror comic called The Chenoo, and the second one was uh, Alien Alamo. And so I had those in my back pocket, and I'm like, yeah, I really think these are great. You know, I want to take a chance and try and you know do these and see if I can find an audience for them, because there's certainly no audience in mainstream comics right now. Or then, this was 3 4 years ago. Um, Things were collapsing. Rates were going down, and they continue to go down. Sales were going down. The, all the SJW crap that was being put in was really going whole hog at that point. And so I thought I'd give it a whirl. And so I discovered Comicsgate. And so the next guy I have to thank is Ethan Van Sciver, because Ethan, um, kind of showed me the way in that he was a great supporter of people that were trying to buck the system. And he has an incredible audience that follows him. And he certainly helped with the success and the launch of both the Chenoo and Alien Alamo. And it's his channel where all the Comicsgate Kings and the Bros go to launch, because he's got the biggest audience. And so he's very supportive, and I really can't thank him enough for helping guide some of us through these different waters. It's a different animal than when I was working for the big two. That was and even the independents. There was still a work for hire deal. And now things are changed, and we've come up with new publishing paradigms by reaching out to you guys. And so the next one that comes up is, in fact, you, the backers, that I'm grateful for, because um, uh, it allowed me to discovering crowdfunding and discovering Comicsgate and discovering the love and the support that you guys, you backers, have for the art form, for my Compass Comics and my projects. Um, is nothing short of amazing, and it's allowed me to tell stories that nobody else was willing to take a chance on. I've always been of the mind that great ideas are out there, but people don't take the risks to get them out there into the public, or worse, they're talked out of it or told the idea is no good. But the fact is, if you've got enough experience in the business and you think something's good, then there's a pretty good chance that other people are going to think it's good too, because you're not that special. I know, my tastes aren't that eclectic or special that nobody's going to like something. So that's what I love about what we're doing now, and the kind of books that we're able to produce. Crazy genre stuff, cross genre stuff. That the big guys, because they have so many layers of bureaucracy that have to be funded, and because they have so many layers of political ideology that they're throwing down everybody's throats and ruining the art form and and the sales, certainly. Um, so this has become an island, and so you guys, take a bow. The gratitude is there, and I can't express it enough. I really do appreciate it. Um, and so, and the final one that I have to thank is my wife Julia, who has been with me for my ride for the whole the whole time. You know, she was 21, I was 23. We met, and within 6 months, we're married. So from the time I was 23, uh, she's been there. She was there when I was working on that first. Well, I was working on the Prowler, and I was working on uh, the Transformers story too. Right after we got married, so she's been there for the whole ride. And when I uh, was unsure of myself, I mean, I always had ambition, and I had a very strong work ethic. So I had goals, and I knew what I wanted to do. Like I said, since I was 12, um, there were times when I had doubt too. Because I was always trying to compete with my idols, and I sucked. But she always had faith. She had confidence in me, and even when I didn't. And so, she is a huge pillar in my career. Uh, and now she's working for Compass Comics. She is going to be the new queen of fulfillment. So yeah, that's a nice little announcement here. So we've got a place that we're going to be renting, that we're going to handle fulfillment in. We're going to handle it ourselves, so that we can just take better control of it, have better customer service, better one-on-one. And she's got great organizational skills, much better than me. This clean studio behind me here is her work. It was a atom bomb before then. uh, so now she's a player at Compass Comics, and you guys will be hearing from her if you've backed any of the books. So that's pretty much everybody who I say everybody, but I'm sure there's some people I forgot. But I tried to hit the major points of the career and the things that I remember that pushed me to that next level to get me through, so that I could thank them. Uh, and let's thank you guys here. Let's see who's in here. Looks like we got a good crowd. See if there's any questions. Oh, Joe Bernardo is here. Hello. Aloha, Graham. My mother was a teacher too. Grateful for her. Thank you, Joe. Dennis Schumann is here. Hey, Dennis. Must be pretty hot down there right now, because it's pretty hot here. Hey, Mike Ortega is here from Louisiana. Paul Art says, hail Graham, hail chat. Luke Korolowitz Art says, holler if you hear me. Mike says, why isn't it coming? There we go. Hello from Louisiana. If you don't believe in hell, come experience our summer weather. Yeah, you guys know humidity, that's for sure. Old Dirty Fatty is here. Bob Singleton. Hey, Bob. Always great catching your love feeds. I was honored to have been fortunate enough to spend a few days learning under Joe in Kansas City, Missouri at a summer course, Joe Kubert, that he did with the school. I hope we can cross paths in person again at Terrificon next month. Yeah, I won't be at Terrificon this year, Bob. I'll be at TampaCon that same weekend. So I'll be down there in Dennis Shoemate's territory. So, but Billy, I think, will be there. So you guys do your cigar and Hawaiian shirt thing. And me and Dennis will do ours down in TampaCon. Let's see. Nice head of hair. I know he's not talking about me. Port Authority bus terminal in the 80s. Lucky you didn't get stabbed. Yeah, I know. Yeah. I mean, it smelled like a toilet too, you know? Some of the bums are, peeing in the corners and stuff. Like I said, I took a very long shower. Uh, a bunch of people talking amongst themselves here. James Instel says, "I wish I could have met Mark Grunwald." Yeah, I'm not sure if I think I met him in passing, like he came into the office. In fact, he did. He came into the office with some John Buscema pages because John was working on the Avengers, where they were bringing back Phoenix because she had died in that famous X-Men story, and they were bringing her back. And Buscema had done some pages, and inked by Tom Palmer. And I remember him showing them to Carlin, and I got to look over their shoulders. I was like, oh, this is why I had no confidence because I was looking at John Buscema and Tom Palmer pages. Jason Sylvester says we could talk back then. I think he's referring to what I was saying about uh, my golden eye. Not seeing eye to eye politically, but still being able to work together. Val Schnitzel says Nolan Schnitzel. He also says Hail Comicsgate. Yeah, Hail Comicsgate. Stippling Vaughn Gold would still love to work with you if the occasion came up. Tim didn't have the desire to do the monthly book. Gold had the fun job of balancing you and John. LOL. Yeah, let's just say that Mike and John held. They're both from Chicago, and they both shared the very same ideology. So, needless to say, it was not mine. Chuck Dixon is the GOAT. Who can argue with that? Dennis says this is a great episode. Well, thank you, sir. Much appreciated. Pork Hunt says, do you remember those covers Dick Sprang did in 1990 for Detective Comics? Sweet. Yeah, I do. They were really bizarre. There was like Batman as a bat type thing. That's the way I remember them. Not the traditional kind of stuff, but they were really cool. So Dick Sprang drew Bane as well. I always thought you drew Bane and he drew Batman and Robin. No, he drew everything, and I just inked it. Hey, you know what? I think I can. Let's see if I got that file here. There we go. Let's see if I don't have the pencils, but I do have the finished piece. So let's throw this up here. And you can see it, in case you haven't. All right, share screen. There we go. Let me just get rid of this. There it is. That's the piece. The only differences that I did on it was uh, the the dark clouds in the background. He had the lightning bolts going, but there was nothing to contrast it with, and I thought it needed something to punch the figure up more. So I put those clouds back there. I used a thumbprint technique to do the edges, and Dick loved that. The raindrops here is an old razor blade style thing that I used to do, and that they used to do back in the day too. You tear up the paper, and It looks really cool. And somewhere around here, this skull, or rather, I'm not pointing to it. Let's go. Yeah, this skull right here might have been the first thing I inked. It was somewhere back in here that I didn't want to mess up his glorious pencils. So there you go, gang. Brandon McCranderson says, I always thought Vengeance of Bane was really let down by its coloring. The art is so much better than the flat and boring colors. Do you agree? I do not. Uh, I believe Adrian Roy colored that. And she used, unlike today, colors had to use color theory to separate form, separate planes, and establish mood. And she did that wonderfully, I thought, given the limited palette that she had back in the day. There was a lot of people that were colorists during that period where they were terrible. But Adrian was very good, and I thought she did a great job. Eric the Guapo. So Graham and Chuck were on the foundation floor of CG. I don't know if we were on the foundation of it, but we've always been, Chuck and I have both always been political conservatives and always loved the art form of comics. We're historians too. We go back, if you've ever watched the Storytellers, you know about all the guys that I talk about. So we love the art form and we hate seeing it being ruined. It's a difference between evolving and changing, and there's a different, and that's very different than ruining. It has to change. It has to evolve if it's to be a living art form. But it also has to. If you're a publisher, you have one job: sell as many comics as you can. And if you start injecting ideology into it that your readers reject, and it's reflected in the sales, and you double down and keep doing it, and then the sales continue to drop, then there's a problem. Then that's somebody trying to ruin it, and that's what we stand against. Stallone didn't really promote that at all, meaning Expendables Go to Hell. Compared to, say, what Keanu Reeves did for crowdfunding, it was sort of a letdown, but Stallone's fault, not yours. Yeah, I agree. I sort of wish that Sly would have stepped up with his, contacts and stuff and really pushed it more. Graham, thanks again for the stories. I love hearing about the old timers like Dick Sprang. Keep them coming. Thank you, D. Jones. Val says, Alien Alamo. What about it? Expendables was in 2020, which is several years after the ground floor of comics crowdfunding. Yeah, Chuck and I did crowdfund Joe Frankenstein years before that, which sort of was at the ground floor. That was 2014. But that was a disaster financially. That crowdfunding it. We used Kickstarter. We didn't know what the hell we were doing, and it just didn't work out. But yeah, I mean, so in essence, yeah, we were early on at the beginning, even though we weren't Comicsgate, but we were crowdfunding early on. Hey, Keith Wilson, how you doing, Keith? Dan Lawless, if you'll permit me to express some gratitude, thank you for taking a chance with my art on giant-sized two-fisted manly tales. Well, Dan, it wasn't a chance. That's for sure. Your art is amazing. And when people see it in the book, when it comes out, they're going to be banging your door down, dude. It's great. How did I discover Comicsgate? Uh, I discovered it because I got caught in the crosshairs uh, from some established comic book pros that I thought were friends, um, only to find out that they thought I was dog shit for working on the Expendables Go to Hell because of Zach's involvement. And I'm like, well, you know what? I don't even know what you're talking about. Chuck Dixon called me and wanted to hire me for this thing. And so it was a work for hire deal. And I said, sure, you know, I got mouths to feed, I got bills to pay. So I took the job. Uh, and it was those SJWs that pushed me. Uh, and I should thank them. I should, yeah, they should be on the gratitude list. Actually, I should thank the SJWs for pushing me into Comicsgate, and into that warm and loving community of comic book readers, and pros that have each other's back and help promote each other. And so to the SJWs, F you and thank you. Angry Gamer, Shanu and Alien Alamo got them both. Well, thank you, Angry Gamer. Much appreciated. Fawad Siddiqui, different indeed. Such a weird time we live in with all this stuff now. Oh my God, yeah, it's like an upside down world sometimes. Appreciate all your work in class, Graham. Well, thank you, sir. Much appreciated. Let's see. Will you ever go to Comic-Con in California? I'm assuming you mean Comic-Con. Even long before this, the last I was at Comic-Con in 1990. I think 1997 was the last time I was there, and I was overwhelming then. And in 2014, I think it was 2014, Comic-Con contacted me and was going to bring me out as a special guest. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's cool. And they brought Chuck out too, and Kelly Jones. And what we didn't know at the time is when they bring you out like that as a special guest is because you're going to receive the Inkpot Award for your contributions to the art form. And we were shocked. We nobody told us. So we were sitting at a panel. We're supposed to do a panel on Nightfall, and Denny O'Neil was the presenter. And so it was really cool because Denny got to present our Inkpot Awards to both Kelly Jones, Chuck Dixon, and myself, which I think was very apropos. But that was the last time I was at Comic-Con. And I have no intention of going back. It's too big. I feel the same way about New York Comic-Con. And I have to say, MegaCon on the Saturday this year, MegaCon, it was crazy busy too. It's just sensory overload at those shows. At least at Comic-Con, you can spill out into the street, into the old town and stuff, and you can spread out. At New York Con, I mean, you walk right out and you're in Midtown. And you got to walk blocks. You got, 100,000 people all piling out at once into New York on a weekend, trying to find restaurants and walking, with the traffic and everything. It's like, who needs that? Cigars, humidity, and comic talk equals good stuff. Yeah, buddy. Tim Mello asks, how was that experience knowing characters you helped create like Bane make it into movies like Batman Forever and The Dark Knight Rises? Bet those royalty checks were super nice. Um, Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, it was especially, the first time when we saw him in Batman Forever, regardless of the interpretation of him. The royalty checks aren't as good as you think. There is some shenanigans that goes on. Uh, so that's all I'll say about that. Ha, there we go. Eric, that's a sore subject for Graham and Chuck, Timmy. Nailed it. And here's another. Val! How did you meet EVS? Well, we've never actually physically met. Um, but we might next month when I think he might be coming up for Garden State Comic Con in Morristown to see Billy and I. I'm hoping he will, so that we can hang out, have a bourbon and a cigar together. But we haven't met physically yet. Um, how did I meet him? Like online? I can't remember. I can't remember if he reached out to me or if Billy had told me I should reach out to him. I don't remember. Hey Rob, I'm just noticing your Compass Comics hat on Wolfman. That's great. Gratitude straight back at you, Graham Nolan, for Chanu, Alien, Alamo, and Manly Tales. Excited for Ghosts, not to mention the cool Compass Comics swag. Well, yeah, like I said before, the support that you guys have shown is just nothing short of amazing. Um, can't thank you enough. Uh, oh, I just skipped here. Here we go. All right. Dale A says Adrian Roy is a favorite of his. Is Tom Palmer Jr. a comic artist? No, no. He was an editor at one time at DC Comics. I'm not sure where he ended up, what he's doing now, but he wasn't an artist. No. Well, here's a $54,000 question. Eric the Guapo wants to know: will you and Chuck revisit Joe Frankenstein? Yes. The answer is yes. In fact, on my publishing docket, when I'm done with Ghosts of Matacumba Key, the next book will be a Joe Frankenstein book. So there you have it. You heard it here first. My earliest pro work was inking you on Power of the Atom, so thanks for putting up with me. Those are fun days, weren't they, Keith? Eric says he thanks the SJWs for that too, LOL. Yes, I got thrown out of a burning building. Yeah, the Titanic exploded and I landed in a lifeboat. Such an un-American way of thinking. Oh, absolutely. Um, he's referring to guilt by association, which he had posted and I missed. But yeah, it is completely un-American. Whatever happened to the Aquanauts? I seem to recall there was an up-and-coming writer involved in that project. That bum, he got thrown out of the business long ago. He needed psychotherapy, so he went to a shrink. This is not the director of the Batman movies. This is, in fact, my brother, Dr. Christopher Nolan, retired, uh, who is a psychologist. Uh, I'm assuming that you won't be working on Expendables 2, Ascent into Heaven. No, um, I'm not working on that. I'm too busy with the Compass Comics stuff, thankfully. Inkpot? Yeah, the Inkpot Award. Look it up and look who's received it. It's pretty cool. Vinton T. Hawk. I enjoy your work, but I wouldn't say I'm very conservative. Pretty liberal, actually. What is your take on liberal fans? My take on liberal fans is the same as any other fan. Um, I don't. Uh, I don't put politics in my work, so it should appeal to everybody. That's the whole point. Is that the mainstream comic guys are putting their politics into their work, um, and it's always a hard left ideology. There's nothing to counteract it. There's no balance whatsoever, and I don't do that, and I never have. Uh, so I want everybody to read my comics. I don't want to piss off any demographic. Um, uh, so that's my philosophy. So, Vinton, I'm hoping that that's your philosophy as well. That you don't judge the work by the creator. You judge the work itself. I mean, if I felt that way, there'd practically be no music or movies I could go to. I mean, every one of the groups or artists that I love to listen to musically, are all left. The same thing with, movies and actors and stuff like that. Sometimes I just don't want to know, just, like they used to say, shut up and sing. Um, don't get on your high horse because you have some type of soapbox and tell me, how to live my life. Get on with yours and I'll get on with mine. Stay out of my shit. Is my motto. So yeah, I want all people uh, to read my work and enjoy it. Graham, who is your favorite CG artist? Well, I'm not going to answer that because I'll piss somebody off. Me. How about that? The Kelly Jones Batman Blood Mist trilogy is great. Yeah, well, everything Kelly does is great. Angela Curry's here. Hello, Angela. Hey, Graham. Hey, chat. Hey, Phil. Uh, Phil from Zaid Comics. They've got the CG swimsuit issue, which is funding right now, which I have a piece in with the Chenoo relaxing with a bikini girl, colored by the great Kelsey Shannon. And there's a whole bunch of really awesome pinups in this book. So if you haven't backed it yet, please take a look at this and give it a like, share it, and if you can't back it, and get on that today because there's a lot of really great CG guys in there, and it's fun. It takes me back to the days when Amazing Heroes, back in the '80s, late '80s. Amazing Heroes was like a uh, information comic magazine about comics and stuff like that. And every year they did the annual swimsuit issue, and I did like 3 years of them, and it was so much fun. And one year I did Tarzan, one year I did Doc Savage, one year I did the Atom. When I was drawing the Atom, I did his girlfriend. Um, oh, I did the Prowler once, so that's 5 years. Uh, so yeah, that it just took me back, and that was a lot of fun, Phil. So thanks for inviting me into that party. Next time you should serve some margaritas, though. That's all I'm saying. Joe, Graham, thanks for your suggestions. We are going back to MegaCon next year. Ah, okay, cool. Oh, Phil's Backer 1537. Thanks for everything, Graham. You betcha. Eric the Guapo. I also wanted to show my gratitude to you, Graham, for giving us all hardcovers for Two Fisted Manly Tales, even though we did not reach 150K. Well, you're welcome, Eric. Again, it's always about giving back. I feel that my backers are the best. They've come out for all three of my projects now and made them very successful. Uh, and I really wanted this book to be a hardcover. It's in fact why I didn't even offer a digital copy of it because I felt like this is something that should be on a bookshelf. All these A-list writers and artists in it, and I just felt that as nice as the Perfect Bound stuff is, I just felt like this thing needed a hardcover. So even though we didn't hit that 150, I crunched the numbers. It wasn't that big a difference. The shipping might be a difference, but the actual printing of it wasn't that big a difference. So as a thank you, I upgraded both covers to hardcover on that, and I couldn't be happier. And I hope you guys are. I got a note from somebody today asking for a refund because he only collects floppies, not hardcovers. I'm like, well, okay, that's not what I was intending when we upgraded here. But, to each his own. Vinton's replying, well, that explains it. I agree with that philosophy. Soapbox politics is bad storytelling anyway. Amen. See, we can come together because what do we want? We want entertainment. We want good comics. That's enough. Eric says, I can't vote for myself. Graham, just say it's Michael Golden. Uh, I can vote for myself. I'm my own. You're not the boss of me. I'm my own boss. I'm voting for me. There. Now what are you going to do? Abras, oh, I'm sorry, Phil. It's called CG Vacation. My bad. I can't even remember the titles of my books, dude. So much great talent in CG. No doubt about it. Uh, Jasper Plan 9 is here. Haven't seen you in the chat in a while, sir. Hope you are well. Thanks for popping in and saying hello. Well, Scott Pickering is another satisfied customer. Excellent. Angela says, yes, absolutely should be a hardcover. It is two-fisted. Thank you, Graham. You're welcome. Brandon McGranderson says digital copies is a totally different business model and takes away from people buying physical books, and I think somehow devalues them. I approve. Jasper says, you're doing great, Graham. Thanks for consistently delivering such great stories and campaign goodies. Well, thank you. Yeah. Darkside Darren says, I bet you added a lot more backers for the hardcover than lost. Yeah, I only lost one. And I think I picked up 40. 30 maybe. I can't remember. Well, Jasper's meeting Michael Golden this weekend at Dallas Fan Expo. Excellent. Well, say hi to Michael for me. That is the most organized office I've ever seen in CG. Well, that's because the new queen of fulfillment, the organizer, Julia, is had cleaned up my studio. She couldn't take it any longer. All right. Well, I think we've gotten through the comments here. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. I enjoyed talking with you uh, at this time. I enjoy these daytime shows because I'm sharper than I am after working all day and thinking all day at night. Um, so I like to reach out at different times, and I hope you guys didn't mind that we did this earlier. If you're used to watching it, or you're catching this later on, rewatching it. then um, you know, sorry you missed it live. But I hope you enjoyed it. And again, thanks to everybody. Thanks to all the people who I named. And thanks, of course, to all you guys for coming on the show, for your comments, and most of all, for your uh, backing and support of these crazy stories that I like to tell. Um, until then, my friends, let's see. What do we got going here? Tonight's what? Tonight's Wednesday, right? So yeah. So we got nothing streaming until the Kings on Monday, I guess. Unless I pop in on somebody else's show. Uh, but until then, you guys have a great week and have a great weekend, and we'll catch you next time. Bye bye now.